Well, I appreciate you hopping on with me. This shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, but yeah, I am Joe, by the way, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man.
I guess I'll start with a little background about me and kind of what I do. My name is Joe. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I work in video production. I do video editing for the Minnesota Wild. So I work in sports. I went to film school in Savannah, Georgia, and then moved out to Portland, Oregon for a little bit, did a lot of agency work, and then we ended up here. So originally from New York. Um, and basically on set is an app where you can kind of, helps you find movie locations because I love to take trips, to go find
Yeah,
locations. And
that's
so
so cool. I think that's helpful. And wait, so you do work for the hockey team, Wild? Is that right?
correct. Yep.
Okay,
I do
yeah.
all the editing for them.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you get any access to like on ice?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I was able to shoot some of the playoff games too, which was really cool.
That's cool. Yeah, playoff hockey is wild. The atmosphere, it's just completely different from regular season. When you get to playoff hockey, it's just like crazy. It's fun. I'm a casual fan of hockey, but it's
Okay.
always worthwhile watching in the playoffs because it's just such a different atmosphere. It's crazy. It's a lot of fun.
It's so fun. And the videos just make it even better to make.
Yeah,
So super
yeah.
cool.
Well, of course. Well done.
Yeah. Awesome.
But that's a good job to get. So, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 2016.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good place to be. Now, did you always want to, when you were in film, when you were in film school, where did you want to go?
Yeah, that's the thing. I wasn't really sure.
Yeah.
And my school was basically like very feature film focused. So, LA or New York. And I didn't know at the time. I was like, oh, maybe, I'm a big horror guy, obviously. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll, work my way into horror. And then I love sports so much. But then I kind of figured out that I could make that a living working in sports. So maybe eventually down the line, I'll be in movies. But right now, it's kind of nice.
Well, right now, that kind of video production is really needed, and also it pays the bills. And venturing into feature, even shorts, any kind of the creative filmmaking, it will take a while.
Mm-hmm.
For people to actually make that as a career to generate income and stuff. So it's such a tough field to get into, especially now. It's just because there's just so much going on in production. It's really hard to get your foot in the door, start earning money on just making genre feature films. So it's tough. So getting in somewhere, and something that took me a while was trying to find my place when I came out of school. Was also trying to get into video production on different levels than just making films, and that was also tough for me to do as well. So it's good that you got that good job, and that's awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's been awesome so far. So I love it. Yeah, I've been trying to make films, short films with my buddies on the side if I can, if I have time. So that's
A great way to spend your time is also just making short films, no matter how low budget, low production they are. If you're just making them for $10, it's just always just good to just keep on making them. It's just such good practice, just to have that under your belt when eventually you do step into making a feature film. If you have a bunch of shorts under your belt, then that's really good.
Totally. That's great. That's great to know. Yeah, I mean, another reason why I like horror movies, and we'll get into it eventually, but like, I feel like there's just so many, cheaply made horror movies that are so good. So I think it's cool to do that and see other people do that, especially nowadays. But well, cool. So like, I guess with the app we have, it's basically like we have a little podcast where we review movies, and I did this little side podcast on my own where I kind of interview filmmakers or film location goers or whoever's really interested in movies. And I've been trying to get with directors and writers, whoever I can reach out to, honestly, and just talk to them. Love to learn more about you and how you got into your films, what you're into, how the whole the trilogy started, any kind of information that you would like to provide.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So yeah, I guess my first question would be, I guess start from the beginning, like where, first of all, the Hell House movies, I think that's what we're going to talk about because those are what I reached out to you about. And found footage is one of my favorite subgenres. I think it's very creative. If you do it well, it's very creative. It's fun to watch, and it makes it scarier for me because it's it's almost like you're there, and because I don't really get scared of horror, but if it's done well, I really appreciate it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love the trilogy, especially the first movie. And honestly, throughout all of them, there's really good jump scares, and I think jump scares are really hard to do well. And I think you achieved that very well. So I would love to kind of hear the background of those movies, or maybe start with the first one, whatever you kind of want to go about.
Oh yeah, sure. No, thanks for saying that. You're right. Found footage can add another layer to any scare because it makes it feel real. So just if it's like you caught a ghost on real amateur video, it's less Hollywoodized. So then, therefore, it feels more authentic and therefore scary. So found footage you have an advantage on in scares when you're doing it found footage, because, and the way I wanted to do it was make it like a documentary, which also just makes it seem more real too when you're making it like a documentary. I took my inspiration from the movie Lake Mungo, which I think was brilliant in what they did. And knowing that you can make a documentary, fake documentary, and make the scare seem real and unsettling. But also, found footage is a cheaper way of making movies. So us indie filmmakers that just go out to make our first film, we don't have big budget, we don't have a lot of money, a lot of resources to draw on. So it's a good way to get into horror. But you also, as you said, you have to do it right too, because since it's so cheap to make, everybody can do it. And so I think, trying to do a different angle on it, make it as believable as you possibly can is the best way to go about doing found footage. And making a documentary just goes into that. It's just like sit down interviews. It's a kind of a simple lighting setup. You can bang out a lot of them during the day, so your production schedule isn't really too much. We filmed the Hell House movies in like 10 to 12 days, all of them. I think the first one took like 12 days, and that was only because we shot for 10 days out at the hotel, out at the Abaddon Hotel, and then we shot for another 2 days in New York, and those are just doing all the interviews. And so like we were able to really bang out like 30 pages of script. Probably not 30, maybe like 20 pages of script in those 2 days, and that's just doing the interviews. And then and the shooting at the hotel can be done in 10 days, because in found footage you're doing one camera angle for every scene. So and then what's complicated about regular narrative films, which we just finished one last year, and that was a 22-day shoot, and that's just because you're doing like 7, 8 camera setups for every scene, and that's rigging, tweaking the lighting for every different setup, and it takes a long time. And so time is money, and so every new day of production is a lot of money. So the more what I love about found footage is that if we can shoot a movie in 10 to 12 days, then we don't have to have $100,000 to film a movie, or $1 million like the bigger films need. We can do it just for a few thousand. But not sacrifice the quality, which we did, which we were able to do. So you got to find that middle ground where you have to make these movies cheaply, because we don't have a big production budget, but also make sure that even though they're cheap, you're doing everything right with sound and camera work and lighting and all that stuff. So you have to find that middle ground where you can do things. You have to give and take in certain areas if you're working with your budget, but that's what's fun about making movies, is finding out what you can do, what you can't do, and trying to make it work and present the product.
That's awesome. Now, how big was your crew for the film?
For the original, I forget offhand, but we had production manager, DP, gap, grip, sound, makeup artist, obviously, which in horror, makeup artist is like this is as important as cinematography. And a few other roles I'm blanking on though, but so there's probably like a group of like 10 or 12 on the crew, including production assistants as well, and then the actors, and then we shot with the main cast, which is the 5 main Hell House actors out at the location. So and the thing, I mean, actually the production of Hell House was mostly, the biggest expense is lodging. Because we were out there in the middle of nowhere, and you got to put all these actors up in hotels. And even though it was like a cheaper like motel, it was still still costs money every night. There's so that's like, I think I want to say like 17, 18 people we had to put up for almost 2 full weeks. So that costs a lot of money. That was most of the budget, and obviously food and everything like that. But so I think the remote location caused the budget to go up a lot. In this last movie we filmed, we were able to utilize Airbnb a lot more, and that saved a lot of money. But when you're going just hotels, because I don't even think Airbnb was a thing when we shot Hell House in 2014. I don't think Airbnb was a thing. But hotels get expensive when you're on location, putting up everybody every night. It gets expensive. I especially remember that in Hell House 3 was very expensive, because there were nights where Hell House 3 had such a large cast to begin with, but then on a few nights where we had to put up the casts of the other movies as well. 1 and 2 came in for a night, and so we had all the cast of 3, all the cast of 2 and 1 all together, plus all of our crew, and like we had the entire inn taken up for just Hell House, and which was great. It was fun. Everyone had a good time. The cast had a good time mingling and meeting each other, but it cost a lot of money. So,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
I can imagine. Now, your location where you guys shot, at least the first film, was that kind of always in your mind, or did you guys scout that out, or how did that fit in?
Yeah, I scouted it out, but when I originally wrote it, it was supposed to be an abandoned house. And if you go to my Twitter feed, it's in my pinned tweet, is the house I found. That really sparked the idea of Hell House, the company, Alex, and everything like that. And it was an abandoned house I found in Rockland County, right outside of New York City, Rockland Lake. And I was out there. You go right over the GW Bridge, and you're in New Jersey, and you take a right, and you're back in New York State. And you drive up the Palisades. It's beautiful up there. And I found this abandoned house and just took a picture of it and inspired the story. So I wrote it as a house, but then I realized I can't really film in an abandoned house. It presents so much logistical nightmares, insurance nightmares, obviously, because it's just not safe.
Right.
So, and it doesn't have electricity, which is a big component of filming movies, is electricity. But so I realized, I said, well, why don't we make this into a place? What I really started looking for was actual haunted houses actual haunted house attractions. And the reason I did that was because if you find the right one, it might look abandoned enough, and then it's functioning. So you don't really have to do too much set design and spend money on production design, because it's set up inside the way you want it to, and outside is the exact way you want it to. It looks beat down and decrepit, but it has electricity. It's functioning. So I was looking at places all over the map, and reaching out to haunted attraction owners, and I reached out to Angie, who owns the Waldorf, the Haunting at the Waldorf, and that's just an hour and a half outside New York City, about 2 hours outside New York City. So it wasn't really that's a huge hurdle in terms of transportation, getting everyone out there. It's by a hub for a bus station, so I was able to bus people out there. So location-wise, that worked out. And then meeting her, and she took me around her haunt, and it fit the story perfectly. And I would change things from it being a house, but change it to it being a hotel. But a lot of the stuff was already still there, anyways, with Tully and his cult, so it didn't really changed too much. Just so it just worked out perfectly. She took me to these bedrooms upstairs. I'm like, I need bedrooms. I'll just turn them into their hotel bedrooms instead of house bedrooms. Nothing big had to change. What it did make was it helped in the opening scene with the chaos of everyone trying to get out. It made that place was such a maze to begin with. The hotel itself, you walk through there and get lost, and a lot of people did. And we were filming there, like a lot of our actors or crew didn't know where they were at times, because it's just you're going in and out of corridors everywhere, and that made it better for filming because people were running around trying to get out. It was much better in this maze of a real haunted location rather than trying to do it in like an old abandoned house. It worked. So finding Angie and finding this hotel worked out so well for both of us, because Angie's been having fun promoting Hell House 2 on her end, like keeping some of when she gets a lot of guests for the Halloween season, a lot of people come out there to see some of the Hell House stuff, and she keeps it up there. And the clown is part of the tour, and the only thing they haven't put nobody's allowed in the basement, because the basement is we never wanted to film in there. It's such a gross, disgusting place. Nobody ever wants to be in there. And she doesn't allow any of the guests to go down there either, because it's just like it's a place that nobody should ever be in.
Gotcha.
But most of the stuff, she keeps most of the stuff still as is. She's done a lot of renovating the hotel since, but there's a lot of places that fans of Hell House can go to her haunt and see a lot of the rooms as they were shot in Hell House.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm gonna have to do that at some point then.
It's really cool. Yeah, a lot of people I see on Facebook, people reach out to me all the time and say they reach on our Facebook page and they say that they visited the haunt and they take pictures outside of it, and it's great to see like some fans are figuring out where it is and going to see it. If you go there out of season, you can only see the outside. You go there in season, which is I think they start at the end of I think they start in September, but obviously through October is their main season, and then you can see a lot of the locations and go inside and see a lot of the locations.
Oh,
It's
that's
really
so
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna do that. That sounds
Yeah, the
awesome.
bar is the one place where they've kept it exactly as is, which is great. Because I always think if we're ever going to film anything additional for it, we need the bar to stay as is. So I'm glad she hasn't touched anything on that.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, was this always going to be found footage?
No, the original script was meant to be narrative, and I changed the format mostly for story reasons, but also then it helped me work out but for budget reasons. But for story reasons, I changed it because I just thought it made a more compelling story to be told as a documentary. And I thought that was much better than trying to do a traditional narrative. So I changed it to found footage, but more documentary, found footage more so than just. And what I always wanted to do was I always wanted to show how the footage was presented to the audience instead of just like the movie opens and we're just presented with raw footage and we're not even know how it's put together, like how we're seeing. We don't know how we're seeing. And that was the whole purpose of Hell House originally, was just to say, this is an edited documentary. This is how the footage was found. This is how you're seeing it. Someone put this together to present to the audience instead of it just like opens on found footage. And and so that's why I chose that format.
Okay, well, it was very effective, so great job on that. Now, did you have any inspirations via found footage? I mean, you said like Mungo. Was there any other?
Yeah, Big Mungo was big. But just like you, I enjoy the genre. So all the classics. Blair Witch is was the trailblazer for the genre itself. Even though I know horror junkies will always argue what is the first, but Blair Witch still was the trailblazer. Got the genre going. So what they did was great, and what they did was they scared you with the unknown, and they scared you subtly, and I love the subtle scares, and my favorite movie is The Exorcist. I think that still holds up, and so I always loved going the route of the satanic supernatural route. So that was kind of, so I guess The Exorcist was a inspiration for that, even though we're not really dealing with any kind of like possession or anything. But I love supernatural, and I love the supernatural that deals with like demons and hell and Satan stuff. So
I love that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now I assume you're a horror fan, obviously. Like,
yeah.
You mentioned, you like that satanic stuff and all that. What other films like influence you, I guess, as a filmmaker in general, and like in writing and all that stuff? Like, what would you put on and be like, I want to watch this for inspiration, or vice versa, like listening to something? Or
it's actually when it comes to filmmaking, it's always it is always The Exorcist.
Okay.
That's always the goal. And what I always tell, whenever we get together to make a new film, I always tell everybody, the goal is to make something as scary as The Exorcist. And I always say that because I know we'll never reach that goal. I don't think anything will ever be. And I would say, as long as we're trying to be, even if we get like just a little bit, like almost there, we'll make a very, very terrifying movie. But like, so I say, nothing's ever going to be as scary as The Exorcist in my mind. And I think that was so horrifying, but I always put that as a lofty goal for everyone. We're going to try to do it.
I love that.
And even in falling short, which we always will, because The Exorcist is king, in falling short, we'll still scare people. As long as you have that very high goal, set that very high goal, you come short of that goal, you're still going to make a really good horror film. So I always use Exorcist as an inspiration. I think it's just such a good film.
Love that. That's amazing. Now, you said you reworked the script to make it found footage. Originally was not. I'm always curious about this because I've tried to write scripts, but especially not found footage. Like, how much of the movies, I guess all of them, are scripted versus kind of just, as you're just like.
Yeah. Everything is scripted. So I write the scripts are all the scripts are all, they look just like any other script, even though they're found footage. It's still Paul's line, Sarah's line, Alex's line, and the action in between, and new scenes. What is good about found footage is that you don't have to stick to every single line as scripted, because there's no coverage that you have to edit together. So we don't have to match things perfectly. And I always tell the actors, I said, it's okay if you don't say the line. I'm never going to call a cut because you're saying the line wrong. If you get the essence of the line and you deviate, but you still got there in a different way, all I want from you is to sound as natural as possible. That in any way you need a line to feel natural, then don't worry about the way I wrote it. Say it the way you want to say it, as long as we still got the meaning. And in a lot of places, the actors said exactly the lines that were written. A lot of times they said it like a variation of the line, that just the way. And then we'd always shoot a lot of takes that were right next to the script, like the actor saying the lines either as is or variations of the lines. And then the last take, I would just say, just like, just screw it, just throw out the script and we always call it the wild card takes, to say whatever you want and to see where the conversation goes. And sometimes we were able to use some of those wild card takes and put them inside, like in the middle or at the end of the scripted scene itself. And then I gave them, they had one afternoon to go out on their own and with the camera and just shoot all this kind of B-roll stuff on their own. And we got a lot of fun stuff out of that. They shot hours and hours of footage. I went through every single minute of it. And of those hours they shot, I think I put about 2 minutes of that into the film.
Wow.
It's fun stuff, like the part where like Joey's like doing his eye trick and they're talking like, and then I think Tony comes in and goes, he lost his eye, and he had the fake eye. That was part of those B-roll stuff that they were filming on their own. And but they had so much good stuff that I wanted to put a lot of it in there. But obviously, you're trying to keep the movie. I think we had, what it was, like 93 minutes. Trying to keep it tight, trying to keep it moving. But it added some like levity before we got into the meat of the movie, into the second act, and when the big scare started happening. I put a little bit of those funny moments of the group together, and I think that helped the audience bond with the group a little bit more before things started getting heavy. So I love that they did it, and they did a great job with all their improv. B-roll stuff was great.
I was gonna say the acting, like I feel like in a lot of times, lower budget horror movie, especially found footage, it's hard. Like it's hard to act, and they did. The whole cast did a fantastic job. It was very believable.
Yeah, they're really good.
Very legit. Like they were actually making the movie like a doc. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Now, as far as like the camera work goes, I mean, you had a DP obviously, but did the actors ever touch the camera and like hold the camera?
Yeah. It always depends on. It is different for every film though. But in Hell House 1, Gore Abrams, who plays Paul, was very excited about the idea of holding the camera and getting in there and doing it, which was very helpful, because I was worried that it would be like an actor didn't want to do that and was kind of like, can the DP do that? Would rather DP do that. And I wanted an actor that would want to jump in there, get their hands dirty and play with the camera and just really get into the character that way. And Paul and Gore Abrams did that. And he did a great job with it. So Brian Harnick, was our cinematographer for the first one, he's so good at what he does. He's so good at like letting the actors know what they have to do and getting the camera ready for them to shoot it. And they get, and then you do everything with the lights and get everything ready to shoot. And then for him, I'm sure that was like a different role for him, to be like, everything's ready to shoot, and then I'm going to stand back and not be part of the camera process. I know for a cinematographer, that's kind of, every time I talk to cinematographers and talking to them about doing found footage, I'm like, I know this is not what you got into cinematography to do,
Right.
But I still need a cinematographer for this. And but Brian was great. He loved what we were doing. He did such a good job on the film, and he did a good job helping the actors get comfortable with the camera and doing that.
That's so fun. I bet this was a blast to edit. I'm sure it was like
It was. I edited it, and I had so much fun editing it, and the way I saw it is I went to an editing school after college. I just took like a 4-week course on editing in New York City, and I remember them talking about the process of documentary editing, and like how you kind of reinvent a story in the editing process through going through interviews and all the B-roll footage you get in documentaries. And I kind of approached it that way, and I was able to kind of like mold the story a little bit different, like really make it like the last draft of the script, as they say. That was like very true for this editing this movie, like filming it as a fake doc, but then editing as if it were a real doc, and finding the right places to put the interviews in, and so I had a lot of fun trying to, and it's a fun process. And I remember we filmed in May. And I edited it throughout the entire summer, September, October. And then in November was the first time I showed anybody the film. And it was a big group. And and it seemed to go over well with this group of people that didn't really know what they were getting into and didn't really know what they were seeing. And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, I think this is going to work, because it worked well on that group. And so I got excited about it all over again in November. And then we soon after that, I sent it to a couple of festivals, and we went to a few festivals with it, and it did well there as well. So
that's awesome.
That was really exciting. Yeah, I'd say the audience experience, showing your film to an audience, is so much more fun. And I know filmmakers love doing that over not having any kind of a live experience with their film. I know these days it's a lot tougher to do, but getting to do that with Hell House was so much fun.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, was that in the theater? Was that theater screenings? Or?
Oh, the festivals, yeah, it was
Festival,
a theater.
Right.
The festival, it was shown in theaters. Two of them, but the one I went to was Telluride Horror Fest.
Oh, cool.
Which is in Telluride itself, but it's right after the big Telluride Film Festival. There's the Telluride Horror Festival happens after that. And I flew out there and it just had a blast with it. And we had a great crowd. It was like Friday at I'm going to say 4 or 5 o'clock. And I was worried like people are going to be working. Nobody's going to really come. And no, people came. It was awesome. And it was great crowds. The first theater kind of crowd that saw Hell House, they had a great reaction to it. And that was kind of like, then it settled my nerves a little bit, like knowing like, I don't know how this is going to be taken. And I was like, whew, okay, people seem to like it. They aren't my mom. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been, I would have loved to see it in theaters. I mean, one of my favorite experiences in movies is Cloverfield. And I think, seeing something like that on the big screen is just so impactful. It's like you're there and it's incredible. And especially when you have the scares, like as in your movies, and it's so effective. Like, yeah.
Well, Cloverfield is like, more so than Hell House, Cloverfield is a movie that has to be.
Yeah.
It's much better for the theater because those sequences are just so crazy and awesome. And, like when it comes to the Hell House, I think big screen, small screen, it's all the same because we're not doing anything big, but like those scares are subtle. I think, so I think people, pretty much 99% of everyone who's seen Hell House has seen it like probably on their private home television. And I think that's fine. And I always made it that way because it is, at the end of the day, it's a doc, but it has subtle scares in it. And I think it plays well on TV too, but there's some, you're right. There's some horror movies that like, it's just so much better in the theater.
The sound design for me is huge. Like whenever I tell people to watch a movie, like it's hard because I want to show my friends, like, especially like paranormal movies, like The Conjuring and stuff. I'm like, I want to watch this with you guys. You're going to talk the whole time. And sound design is such an important part of horror movies.
Well, sound and good. You mentioned that was that we spend a lot of time, you're prepping the sound for these films, especially in Hell House 1, to have like, full surround sound and have sounds coming different areas and everything like that. When you watch at home, most people don't have a surround sound setup. So it's like, it's completely moved. So, and that only plays in a theater. So, we spent a lot of time making the surround sound experience for all the Hell House films for an audience that probably nobody has seen it.
Sure.
So it didn't really matter at the end. But we still have to present it in full surround anyways, regardless, like we're obligated to, we have to, but it's still like nobody's experiencing it that way. I mean, at least people I know. I want a home surround sound setup myself, but it's just like, it hasn't been in the cars and convincing my wife to put like speakers all over our living room hasn't worked out. So, yeah.
But it makes it that much better. Like when you're watching a movie, you're like, wow, this isn't really
so
cool.
Much better. I just have a sound bar with a, what do you call it? The
subwoofer, bass?
Subwoofer, yeah. And whenever, using that on films is, it's so, you can feel it's just so much more impactful. I can imagine just having the subwoofer and the surround would just be knock it out of the park. But I haven't gotten there yet. I'm gonna get there one of these at my birthday. I'm gonna get it.
You should. I'm gonna do the same. So.
Yeah.
Now I guess this could be a question for the whole trilogy, but do you have a favorite part and a hardest part throughout the whole trilogy? Like do you have a favorite memory / like making the movie or something that was really difficult?
I think my favorite sequence in the movie is probably the hardest, and that would be doing the tour goer stuff in the beginning of the first one. And the reason I call it my favorite, it's not like my favorite. Like there's scares I love so much, and stuff with the clown, like just walking down the stairs towards the clown was something that was the first scare I conceived of in Hell House, and I'm glad and nothing changed of that since like the first draft of the script to the last. them walking down the stairs in the middle of the night towards the clown. So I loved filming that. I loved seeing that come out. But in terms of like, it was so hard to do that tour goer scene and make it and pull it off and make it and do it in a day, like half a day. Like we have really crunch time to do it. And that, you know, that's just a testament to everybody, like Joe Bandelli, my producer, and all their crew, assistant directors. They were there organizing the extras, getting people set, and Angie decorating the set. It's just so many people just doing their job at 1,000% to pull that off. Because it was just, I always knew when I wrote the script, I'm like, this is going to be tough, you know? Yeah. And it was very, very tough, but it worked out, and it worked out. That's the thing. I think it worked out. I personally feel it worked out well, and so that's why I think it's my favorite, just because I know how hard it was to make it work, and I think it did work. So that's why I think it's my favorite. But
cool, very rewarding, I bet, to see that come to life.
What's that?
I said very rewarding to see that come to life, I bet.
It is. It is socially something where you're just like, I don't know how we're going to pull this off. I'm not going to change. A lot of things, what happens when you're writing scripts, and what I always advise people to do, is to write for what you think you can pull off on a low budget. And that I never changed it. I just said, like, I think we can pull this off, because it doesn't require money. It just requires dedicated people, extras to come out and say, yeah, I'll stand there in the rain for hours. And I was hoping we would get that, and we did, and they were amazing. The town's amazing. For people in that town are amazing for coming out and doing that for us and helping us out. And then Angie was great at organizing those people. She's the one who reached out on Facebook, blasted out, said, hey, we're filming a movie. We need extras. She got the fire department on board to come out and do that. And to get the fire department to run multiple takes, you know, like,
I bet.
come screaming down with your sirens. Okay, cut. Now go back and do it again. Now go back and do it, like, over and over. And they did it. They were fine with it.
Cool.
It worked
That's
out.
Awesome. That's so cool. That's such a cool collaborative effort.
Well, that's why I always say, filming in small towns, you'll get people who will help, and they're willing to. You film in bigger cities, film in New York, everyone's going to say, no, screw you, like, get out of my way. Small towns, they're like, cool, you filming a movie? Is there anything I can do to help? And I love that. That's
so cool. And that's one of the reasons why I love this film tourism thing. It's like, you know, when I was in Portland, you know, Astoria, the home of the Goonies, like, it's such a small little town, and it's cool because, like, everyone kind of they live off of that, you know, it's like in their city, like, it's part of them, and it's cool to see that. And I assume it's the same thing with, you know, that little town too.
Yeah, it was. Everyone had a great time. They were great.
Good. Now, was this always planned as a trilogy?
Yeah, I always thought, like, if I ever get to make more of these films, I'll explain X, Y, Z. So I made a lot of things ambiguous in the story, purposely thinking that, like, hey, and the off chance that anybody likes this film, maybe I'll make another one. So I was just kind of like in the back of my mind kind of thing, maybe I'll make more, but, like, in my realistic part of my brain was telling me, like, you're making a low budget found footage film. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. All right. Like, you'll be lucky if anybody sees one. And so it was just an idea in the back of my head that I was able to eventually, pen out and explore more once I saw that people were liking the original. I thought maybe I can expand on the story.
That's so interesting because like, after watching all three, like, they're very well connected. Like, they all serve as their individual movies. Like, I love a really good loose trilogy, and I consider this one a really well done version of that. It's like they're great trilogy, but they could also live on their own, and it almost feels like you shot it sequentially. So that's kind of interesting that you didn't.
I think it helps that, like, we were filming in the same location for all three, and that was a hindrance, and that was a curse and a blessing, being able to film at the Abaddon Hotel. I thought it very hard to write new scares in the Abaddon. By the time I got to Hell House 3, like, the story's there. Like, I know how I want to end it, but I'm like, how do I write a new scare in this hotel? It's like, we've seen it all. Right. So that was the challenge for Hell House 3, but I think it worked out. But yeah, no, I love shooting in the same location. I think helps that vibe of keeping the story connected and all. Like, it's like just one story. And actually, I see it as one story told in 3 parts. Instead of, like, I always tell people that I don't consider Hell House 3 my third film. I consider it the third part of my first film.
Gotcha.
So the new film coming out, 825 Forest Road, I consider that my second film. I consider this trilogy almost like, technically I'm saying it's wrong that the trilogy is my first, second, and third film, but for me, it just never seemed that way. It just seems like I was just filming different parts of the same movie, but at different times.
I very much agree with that, actually. When I talk about favorite movies, it's almost like the trilogy. I consider the trilogy as one. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, yeah, won't keep you much longer, but one question I got to ask you is the piano notes. I love it. Love the song. Where did that come from?
That was Gore, Paul. So the script calls for, and in the script it just says Paul is playing a little piano jingle with his friend Hector, and the only reason I wrote that in there was to set up. That's just a setup for the scare later on. After Paul's disappeared, we hear that same piano jingle he's playing somewhere in the house. So that makes Tony and Mac come down and explore the first floor. I never specified what that was going to be. And Paul was sitting there at the piano and he's like, should I come up with something? Or I was like, yeah, I don't care. Let's fool around and see what you come up with. And he just starts going dun, 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 dun. And I was like, don't stop. That's it. Don't do anything. And like, it's perfect. It was so subtle and perfect, and he was having and that's what I mean. Like in all of them, they got into their characters so well, and they had such a fun time making this as well, and they did everything that someone like me making my first film needs their actors to do, which is to really help me out by just like putting a lot of effort into their own characters themselves. I'm wearing 10 hats myself. And so not having to always get the actors there is helpful when I know that they're already immersed in the world themselves. And so that working with them was great.
Oh, that's so cool. That must have made it a lot easier to do everything.
It did. Just working with a good group of actors like that. They're having fun. They're in character all the time. They're so well together. They're having fun on camera and off camera, and just getting a good group together. With crew and actors, when you have a good group on an indie film, it's an experience for them, and when people can bond and have fun, it's just and that's what our production was. Everyone had a good time on it, so they had lasting friendships that have been made on it. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Great. Now I watched all these films on Shudder. Is there where else are these on the DVD?
They're on Amazon and iTunes as well.
Okay, cool.
But I always say Shudder is the place to go. I mean, because Shudder's the best. Yeah, and once you watch a movie on Shudder, you find other things like it on Shudder. And the way Shudder breaks down the genres of horror is great and helpful. And it's just the best place for. So I've been such happy that we were able to be partners with Shudder, and they could put our films on their platform. That's because humbling for me, since I'm a fan of Shudder myself.
Sure, totally. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess we can wrap it up here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned briefly, go into as much detail as you want or as little as you want, but you said you wrapped up another film that you're doing. Like whatever you're comfortable explaining with, what do you have kind of coming up?
Yeah, no, it's just it's a movie called A25 Forest Road. We shot it last October, September into October, and of 2021 last year, and it's currently nearing picture lock within the next few weeks of its edit. So I don't know when what the timeline is after that, but basically it's just a good old fashioned haunted house tale.
Amazing.
I'm very excited about. So I'm excited.
I will be there to watch it when it comes out. So. Well, cool. Well, sweet. I mean, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you talking and taking your time out of your day to do this. So
great. No, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. Yeah. Well, cool.
Sounds good, man. Thanks so much.
All right. Yeah, you got it. All right. Bye.